Predictable. So I don't want to keep you too long. I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. When I was sort of planning out the interview, I was thinking to myself, it's been a busy week for you, but then I look at it as in almost every single week, I'm sure for you guys, is very busy. And if anything, probably this week is monumentous, you know, with the arrival of the first aircraft. It's a sigh of relief in a step of many to getting that first flight underway. So while we're here today, I usually try and have different subsections to make it as interesting as possible for you. So that's personal, Bonza, and a couple of fun questions towards the end. But really, to get to know you better, I wanted to start off with taking a look at your history. So now you're the proud CEO of Bonza, but a lot of my audience are part of the younger generation. So they're plotting what will be next for their future. And I guess you as a CEO, many people probably look up to you and would love to be at the heights that you're at. So when you were growing up, did you ever envisage yourself reaching this point and, of course, with all the other parts in your career? Or did you have a different outlook?
No, like many people sort of in their, teens and 20s, it was a case of there was an element of blowing with the wind and going where the wind blows you. And to a certain extent, that's how I found my way into aviation. So there isn't any, my dad was a Greyhound trainer in the UK, and it's there's no long history of aviation in the family or anything like that. But I sort of got myself into a charter airline based at London Gatwick about 150 years ago, and once you're in this thing, it's very difficult to break away. And that is the same, I guess I fell into that particular trap.
Mm-hmm. And one quick look at your CV and the airlines you've been at would definitely say you have a host of experience and you've been to many different aviation companies. So I guess with that huge experience, like you said, over the past 150 years, what did you learn from moving across each role? And I guess what did you bring with you to your role now today in Bonza?
I guess, wherever, the key learning is wherever you are in the world, people want to travel. Travel is aspirational. We all want to do it. We all want to see people. We all want to catch up with friends and family. We want to visit new places, experience new things. And wherever you are in the world, that holds true. What I love about our industry is the fact that we do exactly that. I don't get too carried away with the business travellers, to be quite honest. There's some airlines that do that very, very well. I've generally not been associated with, business-focused airlines. I love what we do from a low-cost perspective, although I do feel very strongly about low cost does not mean low quality. I'm a huge advocate of high quality, low cost. It doesn't matter whether you pay $10 or $100. You deserve great quality service, which means on-time performance, service with a smile, and people who want to be there and assist you. And I think sometimes the low-cost element of the business has the reputation it deserves because some of the charging mechanisms have been a bit punitive, and I think that's something to avoid. Mm-hmm. In terms of other lessons learned, I think whether you have a good experience or a bad experience, you actually learn from all of those, and you probably learn more from the setbacks that you experience or the negative experiences that you have. You probably learn more on a personal level from those than probably the other side of the equation when everything goes smoothly and goes well.
I'm glad you said that because I think that can be applied to absolutely anything in life. The challenges really, they change you, do you know what I mean? You have to look at it, you're challenged in a different way that you've never experienced before now, whether that's aviation, whether that's going to the supermarket and the product that you want is not there. You have to adapt your thinking, and that's a great skill to have. So I definitely understand what you're saying there. And I guess moving now on to the main thing, being Bonza, I wanted to just generally start off with why Bonza? So what was the thinking behind that and how did that all come about for someone that maybe hasn't heard as much about the airline being in Australia?
Sure. I guess the origins of Bonza was back in 2009. I returned from three and a half wonderful years in the Philippines, basically transforming Cebu Pacific into the low-cost carrier that largely it resembles today. And I would step out onto my onto the veranda, out onto the porch, and have a look up at the aircraft flying over the top of my house, and realise that most of the people where I was living just couldn't afford to get onto that aircraft, and it was just bizarre. There is a complete disconnect here in Australia, and in fact, in many parts of the world, there has been, whereby people in regional centres actually earn the least amount of money from a demographic perspective, and yet the airfares are the highest. People in capital cities who have access to the low-cost carriers generally earn more money, and yet they have the lowest airfares available to them. So a complete mismatch in terms of, I guess, supply and demand of the lowest fares. And I guess that was something which just didn't sit well with me. So it was a wrong that I wanted to have some influence in trying to right based on the experience that I'd had in the Philippines, and where in the world.
You make a valid point about the supply and demand and how people in those regional areas struggled. I don't know if you know, but I'm Australian myself. Grew up in Melbourne for 18 years. I'm now in Canada for a couple of months, but I am Australian. So a lot of what you say and a lot of Bonza in general really resonates with me as someone that grew up in Melbourne and saw those airfares really high. At times they would come down, and I remember at a certain point they were very low, but then they just shot right back up. And I guess having that availability when everything in the world is so expensive, it just wasn't really there. And it always became a struggle to travel. You're always looking at more premium services. So that's something I've always been very excited about with Bonza, is the opportunities to serve those regional markets. And even today when I was explaining to someone about, I'm interviewing you today, and they're like, so what's all Bonza? And this is someone that doesn't know too much about aviation. I gave that example that you said, and I am in a small town in Canada, and I said, imagine if we didn't have the good connectivity here, and the only couple of airlines that flew in, the price point was very, very high, and all of that kind of thing. And they were like, oh, wow, that's very interesting. And I guess that's what, for me, has always hit home about Bonza, is that affordability that you guys will have in comparison to what else is on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, this market already has some good airlines in it, without doubt. But their focus is absolutely squarely on the business end of the market, and it works for them. That's absolutely great. There is just a gap here in the market for a leisure-focused, independent, low-cost carrier to fill the significant niche which exists in this market, which has already been filled around all of the other largest domestic aviation markets in the world, but just not here in Australia.
Totally. And I've been doing a lot of digging today. I wanted to make sure I wouldn't ask you the same questions and you'd be too bored, so I thought I'd put a spin on everything. Obviously, the 737 MAX is a big part of Bonza's future, and that's been made possible thanks to the investment partner being 777 Partners. So rather than say, how did you get the 737 MAXs, I thought I would say, how did you guys determine that the MAX would be the best fit? Aside from having 777 Partners readily available, were there other sort of determining factors that saw you guys steer that way?
We knew that there was an opportunity for a mid-sized jet. Whether that mid-sized jet was, which way we turned, whether it was left or right, I was very open to that. And really, what we were able to leverage is the fact that through our investment partner, 777, they have managed to secure, obviously, a significant order book of, if you like, pandemic-priced MAX aircraft, which clearly lent us then in the direction of the 737 MAX, with all of the, fantastic things associated with that. When we, I will share this with you, when we actually came up with the original business plan, we were assuming 5 to 10-year-old aircraft. And not once did we dream that we'd actually have, new aircraft off the lot made available to us. So we're in bonus territory. There's a slight downside in terms of probably we're paying sort of probably slightly higher lease rates, but there's a more than offset in terms of lower maintenance costs, and of course wonderful fuel burn advantages associated with the MAX aircraft.
And there's nothing like the smell of a pretty much new aircraft as well. It's a beautiful, especially with the launch of a new airline, having that new smell is I'm sure for you guys is like, that's a lovely feeling as well.
Yeah, I smelt that yesterday. That was quite a moment yesterday, smelling those. Absolutely, as you say, that new aircraft smell was. It's still in the nostril today.
So this is off the script. I just thought, how was yesterday for you? Obviously, on a personal level, away from all the pressures you might have felt. Like, did it fill you with a sense of pride to get to that point where you saw it right in front of you after, I'm sure, so long of planning?
Yeah, it was actually a little surreal, as you can imagine, after such a long time. Even I was saying to a couple of people yesterday that even some of the video footage of the aircraft in Fiji and in Honolulu. Even then, that was almost, it's on the way. Well, I was still a little bit non-believing. So I had to physically, go up and touch the fuselage yesterday and go, you know what, it's here and it's real.
This is mine.
So that was good. And then obviously taking a few snapshots with the various other, Australian Airlines fuselages behind it, sort of makes it very real when Bonza is sitting there next to others on the ramp.
I saw that one with Jetstar in the background as well, and I just thought that must feel for you guys real, like it's here. It's not turning back. It's here to stay now.
Yeah, it did make it very real. And as I say, some of those photos actually brought it very much to front of mind.
Of course, and probably for alongside the 737 MAX and the Ultra, the low-cost fares that you guys have, I think one of the biggest points when I think of Bonza is 27 routes to 17 destinations. I guess it's like a tagline that you guys have. So tell me a little bit how you pick those 17 destinations. Obviously, I know there's the focus on the regional aspect, but what sort of data did you use to dig deeper and find the right choices?
My background about 120 years ago was at United Airlines and network planning. I had the fortunate experience of being as part of their network planning team back in the late 90s when the Star Alliance was growing up and forming. And that was a wonderful time to be around, such a fantastic network carrier with everything which was happening around the world in terms of aviation at that time. Network planning can be quite a complex beast. When it comes to low-cost carriers, less so. It really is a case of looking at the catchment populations and looking at the demographics and then interpreting them. Wherever you are as a low-cost carrier, it's about having a significant dartboard and throwing those darts. Not all of them are going to stick in. Some of them are going to bounce off and head back towards you. Some of them will drop off onto the floor. Most of them, though, will do fine. So there is an element of throwing darts at the dartboard. But in terms of the key inputs, it's the catchments of those particular centres. When you actually look at some of the size of those centres, you go, gee, they're pretty small. And then you actually look at the catchments, the natural catchments, and they go, well, actually, they're 100 to 200,000 plus people. That's not insignificant. And currently, those particular catchments have an opportunity to fly to their capital city 8 times a day, but nowhere else. Mm-hmm. And you sort of go, do those people just want to fly to their state capital, or would they really like to get off to the beach, or would they like to go somewhere else other than the state capital? And the answer is yes, of course, they would dearly love to, especially if the fare was $50 or so.
And especially if they didn't have to go to that capital, then get on something else potentially, and then get to it, because that's a nightmare, and it's especially in this day and age, that's a nightmare in itself.
Absolutely, which is, we were very thrilled with our IATA designator of being AB. We thought if there's something that fits very well, that's exactly what we're all about. We're about getting you from A to B without the C, which is the cost, the connectivity, the chaos, the confusion, whatever you'd like to throw in there. But we're about from A to B, and that's, as you say, very, very applicable for people outside of Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, which happens to be half of the Australian population, which is sometimes lost on people. But even for people who do live in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, Melbourne and the Melbourne Airport team were very forward-thinking, and they recognised that even a metropolis like Melbourne that has wonderful connections already, we've got 9 routes, of which 6 of those are not flown by any other airline on our initial network. 8 of those 9 do not have low-cost fares. So 6 of the 9 not operated at all, 8 of the 9 without low-cost fares. So even for the large capital cities, we are and we will bring something very different in terms of a broader footprint for them and their customers.
As a Melburnian myself, that's nice to hear that they were very open to you guys and what you've offered as a company.
Yeah, they have been, and there are others who are now sort of maybe who turn their head away, who are now probably looking back towards us, going, you know what, these guys do to offer something different. It's not going to be. We're about market growth. We're about not taking out of other people's pockets. This is about unserved markets, which otherwise will not travel, and underserved markets. Meaning adding a low-cost alternative in the market. And those people that we're talking to will not be travelling on the business travellers because $400 just doesn't work for them. And unfortunately, that's the cost and has to be the cost for a number of these carriers because of the equipment they fly and the way and the business they operate.
Exactly. You're right there. Just the differences in the way they operate as an airline and then their charging points and the prices and the experience. And while that definitely floats for some people, like you said at the beginning of our discussion, for other people, there needs to be that other alternative, which I guess is where Bonza is looking at slotting itself in addition to having that route network that maybe isn't present elsewhere.
Yeah, 93% of the 27 initial markets, and it is very important, it's initial markets. 25 of those 27 are not flown by any other operator. There's only 2 markets there, Melbourne to Mildura and Melbourne to the Sunshine Coast. And very candidly, Melbourne to the Sunshine Coast is there purely for connecting the 2 bases together and to get the aircraft back and forth from a maintenance perspective and an aircraft swap perspective. Melbourne Mildura is the only market which is where we're actually on the market. But as you will know, being a Victorian, Melbourne Mildura has 2 existing operators, both very focused on the business end of the market. Yeah. And the alternative is a lengthy 6 to 7 hour drive if you're lucky. If you don't want to pay the $400 to $500 general round trip between Melbourne and Mildura, which is, just so people know, it's just about an hour or a bit less than an hour from a flying perspective. If we can offer that for close to $50 one way, there's going to be a lot of people suddenly go, I'm going to ditch the driving. Let's catch the aircraft.
That's definitely one I'm targeting. I'm headed back to Melbourne just the beginning of September, so I'm definitely targeting either the Mildura or Sunshine Coast one to give it a go, because you are right. The other price points for the established are just, I had a look as an example when I've been growing up, just for fun, and it left my jaw dropped. I was like, it's an hour. Are you pulling my leg? And I was like, no way, I'll just go somewhere else if need be. But you're right there that it is quite pricey, and obviously it fits a certain market, but it's great to have that alternative as well. And I guess we've been talking about airports, so why not stick with it? What is the process for getting that approval from the airports to fly in and out of? Now, you mentioned some were maybe a bit more hesitant and have slowly but surely come back. But I guess in the early stages, how do you approach an airport to, I guess, start a route kind of thing?
It actually goes back to last October when we said, look, we're here. And we actually said, look, if you have interest in 737 MAX operations from Bonza, please let us know. So there was an element of airports self-declaring interest or otherwise. And we approached 45 airports. We only had 1 negative response from 1 airport. And then basically it was a case of going through and speaking to each of those airports and understanding how serious some of them were. Those that were lukewarm were put on a, well, let's see later list. And those who were very, very enthusiastic, well, they're the 17 that we see on the initial route network. And it is, a lot of people, when you're talking about short flights, the airport cost component is incredibly important. A 1 hour flight, and if you're paying $20 to $25 or more in passenger service charges at both airports, it makes offering a $50 fare very, very difficult. So if you can work with airports and they understand that you're going to bring something different to the market, you're not actually going to be taking out of one hand of theirs and putting it into the other hand. If you're talking about true market stimulation, and therefore they are ahead, their region is ahead because they're getting more tourists. Their businesses locally are better supported. They've got more access to more markets. All of those things basically are generally very positive for the airports and the catchments involved. And that has enabled them to come to us with very attractive long-term pricing, which means that we can commit to their markets and they can commit to us.
Mm-hmm. And that was an important thing when I've been reading up, is the long-term commitment as well. I believe you said something along the lines of that it was important.
Yeah, it is. It's no good, if you can come into a market. I'm not a massive fan of stunt fares. Mm-hmm. When we were in the Philippines, we used to, offer fares for 2 cents. That's fine. It's a fantastic thing to raise some awareness. However, you also raise a disappointment factor. If all of a sudden there's a limitation on those 10,000 or 50,000 fares, if all of a sudden, you have 200,000 or more people who would like to travel with you for a less than $1, you've just actually created some disappointment. So I would rather that we go into the market with sustainable fares that a lot of people can access, because then we're actually delivering on our promise.
Totally. I didn't realize I've been talking so long, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. I'll try and move on as quickly as I can, so I do apologize for that. The digital age is something I did want to cover with you, and I guess Bonza's uniqueness comes about, especially in the Australian market, is the app for bookings. So I was wondering if you'd tell me a little bit about that, because you did say, I believe it's got a little bit to do with like an Uber-like system in terms of, not that the plane will come pick you up from the house, but not quite to that extent, but it's going to be like an Uber sort of payment and all of that. So how did that come about, and what's the logic and thinking behind such a big decision?
Yeah, we absolutely want an app-first strategy. The reason for that is, unfortunately, if you have a lot of bookings which come through third parties, in times of disruption or schedule change, that information related to schedule change or just disruption, if you don't have the necessary contacts, unfortunately, airlines can be tagged sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly, with not communicating appropriately with customers. Mm-hmm. We want to utilize the app as an app-first strategy, so that what we're able to do is communicate with our customers all the way through the travel experience. And in that way, as and when things go wrong, we can actually communicate very, very proactively with our customers. And we can, if you like, avoid, hopefully, one of the largest concerns that we have as an industry, which is lack of information quickly in a timely manner.
Exactly, and that's an issue now, with what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can put your head in the sand and say, well, it won't happen. Well, the fact is, it's aviation, it will happen. And, disruption is, we are, and you may have picked up on this yesterday, our first aircraft is actually a spare aircraft. We are actually committing to the market by actually having a spare immediately up front, because we know things will go wrong. We hope things don't go wrong regularly, but we need to have the ability to recover. And there's certainly a significant cost associated with that. But that's also part of the, we're here for the long term, and you have one opportunity of creating a good first impression, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to create a great first impression, and part of that is by being able to communicate with our customers through the app. What it also means is, on board the aircraft, we can actually communicate. We can obviously make sure from an entertainment perspective, from an onboard communication perspective, everything is through the app. We also get quite excited about our average flight time of 100 minutes. Each aircraft has, with 6 sectors a day, 1,000 customers a day. So that's 100,000 eyeball minutes of opportunity on board our aircraft to, if you like, and I'm going to use a word I'm not comfortable with, but retail, and to actually communicate with our customers. And if you're flying into the Sunshine Coast, the beautiful Sunshine Coast where I am at the moment, if you're flying in and you maybe want to go visit Australia Zoo, maybe we can sell you the onboard the aircraft flying into Australia Zoo. You can, you and the family, you can book your visit to Australia Zoo whilst you're flying into the Sunshine Coast. We can make a little bit of money out of that. You're happy as a customer. that's the retail opportunity for 100 eyeball minutes that probably our industry probably doesn't make the best of at this moment in time. And I think we have an opportunity, and I think Bonza will be at the forefront of that.
I totally agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just sitting in, how I like to say, a cylinder for quite a while, just a tube, and there's not a whole lot to do. And why not, if you are going, like you said, and a lot of people, the target audience, if you're going on holiday up on the coast, why not? You know, it makes it a bit more seamless for the people, and it may lead them to come back. They're like, what an absolutely incredible experience over maybe something I experienced a few years ago. So I definitely get you there, and that's something I have seen when you've talked about Bonza, is especially the onboard product and what you guys would be offering, and I was like, that's something I have not seen before. So massive kudos there. I'll just jump through the last couple of questions in the area. These ones are community driven, so I got a couple that people wanted to ask you directly. And the first one was, I've seen it inklings around, but I wanted an answer just from you. So what's the significance of the name Bonza? And how did that come about as a name?
Bonza, we wanted something which says we're very different in the market. You know, we are offering something very different, and we wanted to say we're very proudly Australian. We wanted to say we're proudly something very different in the Australian market. And we actually, you know, we started off with a list of about 300 different, there's some bizarre stuff on there. It's, you know, it's, yeah.
Can you give me one? One of the craziest?
A whole raft. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of crazy in there, but we ended up with Bonza, and yeah, it works. You know, it actually means good, well executed, and you know, that's exactly what we need to be. We need to be excellent, and we need to be well executed. And if we can achieve that, well, you know, that's Bonza. And there is an element as well of we almost want to bring Bonza back. It's almost like a term which, you know, is generational. It's still used in a little bit in more in regional areas.
Well, that's perfect then.
Yeah, there is an element of, we want to bring Bonza back. And most importantly, we wanted to reinforce the fact that we're something different in the market, but proudly Australian.
Of course. And the last question in regards to just community ones is purple. It's a key colour for the branding, and some may look at it as in, wow, purple. So how did you guys come to purple? Were there other colours you were exploring, colour palettes, or was purple always at the forefront?
We wanted a bright colour, like most low-cost carriers. Mm-hmm. You know, you sort of go, how do we stand out? And in this particular market, you know, red was gone, orange was gone, yellow. It's, you know, it's a tricky one. There was someone who was after lime green at one point, and I went, no, don't like that. Purple, to be quite honest, my wife tells me that, you know, purple are the sunsets and the sunrises. That works. I actually also have the jacaranda trees.
My dad loves that. Absolutely adores one. We have one as well.
Yes. So I actually have a bit of an affinity for purple, I think, as a consequence. Mm-hmm. And that's where it ended up.
Well, it's a good choice because obviously I've been into aviation since, as young as I can remember, probably 4 years of age, and I've been to Melbourne Airport week after week with my dad, and slowly but surely and progressively, I'd argue, the colours got a little bit, they sort of disappeared. So seeing purple eventually, it's going to be a nice change, I would definitely say. So
it was very striking on the runway yesterday at the Sunshine Coast. It really was. It really did stand out very well, and looks even better up close.
Yes. So on to our last area before a little bit of a fun conclusion. So this is about the future, and I guess when I put this forward to someone, I say, what's the next 10 years look like? But see, 10 years sounds like a long time, but in an aviation world, 10 years comes like that. It can all come. So it's to be completely honest with you, it's a long way away, but it's also close, and it's hard to sort of find that middle ground. So, in regards to the future of Bonza, are you guys exploring potentially other areas away from Australia? I know one of the biggest parts of Bonza is serving those underserved markets. Do you see potential for that in other areas like Southeast Asia or the Pacific later down the line, of course?
No. Really, you know, it's I guess with a name like Bonza, It really is, it's ring fencing us to the Australian market. We believe the opportunity is very, very significant here. There is a significant gap in the market, and job number 1, 2, and 3 is to fill that opportunity and to fill it and to execute really well.
I like that, to be honest. I think often we see, and again, not that there's something wrong with that, but we see a lot of companies maybe, and not even in the aviation space, look to expand so quickly and maybe forget about what they're aiming to do. And for you guys, it is capturing that regional. So it's almost nice that you guys are going to be sticking to that one area, do you know what I mean? And focusing on that, really harnessing it and growing that market that you guys see a potential for. So that's nice to see. And I just think we'd move on to now a bit of rapid fire to conclude off, to leave you on a good note for your day. So basically all you need to do is yes or no to these questions, and they're very traditional to Australia, and it's got to be whatever first comes to your head. So Tim Tams, yes or no?
Yes.
Vegemite, yes or no?
Yes.
Lamingtons?
No.
Why is that?
Just too spongy.
Okay.
Just too, yeah.
Fairy bread?
No.
No. And then 4 and 20 meat pies?
Yes.
Yep. And finally a sausage sizzle at Bunnings?
Yes.
Yes. Massive yes?
2 yeses for that
2
one.
yeses. Favourite one?
So yeah. Absolutely. The sizzle, for sure.
That's all for me. I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit down. I know you're very busy, so I appreciate you getting up early and taking the time to chat with me. I'm very excited for the future of Bonza, and I'm very excited to jump on board one of your aircraft in the coming months. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for letting me join you.
No worries. Thank you. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right.
Keep in touch.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.